The first thing Xander Lowell felt when his ribs cracked was the cold. Not the pain, not the sharp gasp echoing around his helmet, but the snapping chill of metal pressing into his side. His suit hissed in protest as he rolled onto his back, vision swimming behind the screen of his visor. "Xander, status?" came the voice from his earpiece, calm, clipped, too clinical. He coughed, then regretted it instantly. 3 ribs, maybe 4. Can't tell. Might be 5. Breathing hurts. Do not move. Emergency team en route. Too late for that. He was already moving. The training base on Mars, officially referred to as the Cross-Colony Adaptive Physics Habitat, but more affectionately known as the Sandbox, wasn't designed for comfort. It was there to break people and see who put themselves back together again. Xander, apparently, was one of those people. Just not today. The fall had been stupid. He'd misjudged the gravity differential during a climbing drill on the Olympus Ridge simulator and landed wrong. Not catastrophically wrong, but just enough to make standing up feel like trying to breathe with a bear on his chest. As he struggled to sit up, a faint shadow moved across the edge of his visor. Not human, not even close. "Please remain horizontal," said a voice, gentle, oddly melodic. Xander blinked through the sweat pooling near his eyes. A tall alien figure crouched beside him, 3 eyes glowing faintly in the red light of the Martian sun. He recognized it, or rather him, student observer from the Uxery Institute. Name was something long. Xenobiology had given up trying to spell it, but everyone called him Eller. "No offense," Xander rasped, "but you're not exactly certified in Martian rescue protocol." "I am merely observing," Eller said. "Your reaction to injury is noteworthy. I bet." Eller tilted his head. "You are in pain, yet you made a joke. This is not uncommon. But I do not understand it. Welcome to the club. Does the joke alleviate the injury? No. It just makes the pain feel like someone else's problem for a second." Eller made no reply. He simply watched as the med team arrived, lifted Xander onto a sled, and slid him toward the base's infirmary. He didn't speak again until 6 hours later, when he appeared beside Xander's recovery bed, uninvited, unannounced, and utterly fascinated. "You laughed when the technician told you the ribs were fractured." Xander turned his head, wincing. "I also cursed a lot. You missed that part. But the laughter, it was genuine. As genuine as it gets when your bones are rearranged like puzzle pieces. Why? I don't know. Habit? Denial? Some people cry. I laugh. It's not a system, it's a reflex." Eller blinked, all 3 eyes processing. "I must record this. I have cataloged over 123 human expressions of suffering. But laughter was previously categorized under positive stimuli only. Welcome to the paradox." Over the next few days, Eller didn't leave. Not entirely. The alien student was part of a cross-species observation program, an initiative born out of post-contact diplomacy. While most of his counterparts focused on human agriculture, mechanics, linguistics, Eller had chosen the unpredictable minefield of human psychology. Xander, to his own dismay, had become Eller's primary subject. "You laughed again when the nurse dropped your painkillers. I also almost cried. Again, it's a spectrum. But you were in visible distress." "Exactly." Eller paused. "And yet you made light of it. This is not deception." "Nope. This is coping." Eller's data module beeped quietly. "Coping. Not healing. Right? So laughter does not indicate recovery. Not even close." Eller sat beside him, limbs folding neatly. "Then why do so many humans laugh in pain?" "Because we're not built like you. Our bodies break. Our minds, sometimes they bend first. Laughing keeps the dark from swallowing the rest." Eller seemed disturbed, or what passed for disturbed among his species. His pupils narrowed and he went silent for a long time. Then, "I must see more." He did. The next incident happened during a simulated fire drill. Xander, still limited in movement but cleared for light duty, was helping guide trainees through a smoke-filled corridor when one of the pressure doors malfunctioned and slammed shut on a cadet's leg. The scream was immediate. Bone snapped. Blood flowed. Xander helped pry the door off, ignoring his own pain as he crouched. The cadet cried, muttered apologies, then between gasps laughed. It wasn't joy. It was something else. They're going to kill me for wrecking the suit, the cadet said, voice trembling. You just earned it some character, Xander said. They both laughed. The pain didn't go away, but something shifted. Eller watched from behind the observation glass, recording everything. Later, he confronted Xander again. You humans do not hide pain. You display it. Yet you lace it with humor. That is contradictory. Maybe. But it's how we survive. You mock your suffering. Sometimes that's all we've got. Over the following weeks, Eller expanded his study. He interviewed patients in recovery, soldiers in rehab, miners with frostbite, cooks with oil burns, engineers with broken fingers. Most responded the same way, somewhere between grit and gallows humor. A woman who'd lost 3 toes in a habitat breach joked that she'd finally get out of line dancing. A man who fractured his collarbone during a gravity surge said he'd always wanted to learn to write with his other hand. None of it made sense to Eller, but he documented it all. Then came the tremor. A subsurface quake, rare but not unprecedented, hit the outer ridge of the base during a night cycle. The damage was localized but brutal. One of the dormitory wings collapsed. Xander was there, not as a patient this time, but as staff. He pulled 2 cadets from the wreckage before the second tremor hit, pinning him beneath a steel beam. When rescue found him, he was conscious, bleeding, and laughing. Found the gym, he gasped. Looks like I skipped leg day. He passed out seconds later. The injuries were serious: pelvic fracture, dislocated shoulder, multiple lacerations. He was in surgery for 8 hours. Recovery would take months. Eller stood outside the infirmary, data module silent. Why would he joke then? One of the nurses muttered nearby. He was half dead. Eller didn't answer. He spent the next few days in quiet observation. No interviews. No questions. He simply watched. It wasn't until Xander woke, pale and groggy and bandaged to the eyebrows, that Eller returned. You were in pain again. Yeah. And you laughed again. Yeah. Why? Xander turned his head slowly. Because crying doesn't change anything. And neither does screaming. But laughing. It makes people less afraid. It makes me less afraid. Eller stared. Do you fear death? Everyone does. But laughing in the face of it? That's not denial. That's defiance. Eller looked down at his module and typed something slowly. Then he looked back. We have no word for this. But I believe I understand now. Xander closed his eyes. We call it laughing through pain. And it is not a malfunction? No. It's a choice. Eller stood there a while longer before leaving. 3 months later, Xander walked again. Not well. Not fast. But he walked. Eller was leaving the station, returning to his homeworld to complete his thesis. Before departure, he left a copy of his findings with the base commander. The title read, Laughing Through Pain, an Analysis of Human Emotional Reflex in Response to Trauma. The final line of the report was simple. They hurt. They laugh. And in that laughter, they live. Xander's first step without assistance was less of a triumph and more of a controlled collapse. His left leg wobbled, the right dragged half a beat behind, and he ended up gripping the parallel bars like a drowning man clutching driftwood. The rehab bay smelled faintly of antiseptic and ozone from the muscle pulse stimulators, and the ceiling buzzed with recycled air. You moved the toes, said Kessin, watching from across the room, 6 limbs folded neatly, 3 of them holding data slates. That is marginally impressive. I moved the toes, Xander muttered. Throw a parade. No parades are scheduled. Your sarcasm is misaligned with your progress metrics. Xander leaned against the bars, catching his breath. I'll try to recalibrate my enthusiasm. Kessin, taller than most of the other visiting students, belonged to a species called the They. Their skin shimmered faintly under artificial light, not quite silver, not quite sea glass. Their eyes didn't blink in the conventional sense, more of a ripple across the surface. "You should not be on your feet yet," Kessin said, adjusting a slate. "Your skeletal fusion is incomplete, and your right hip remains underdeveloped from disuse. Tell that to my physical therapist." "I did. She told me to record your gait and keep my opinions to myself." Xander cracked a grin, then winced. "Fair." He tried again. This time, the right leg bore weight for a full 3 seconds before buckling. Kessin didn't move to help. None of the observers ever did. They were instructed not to interfere unless life support was compromised. Instead, Kessin tapped something and spoke into a translator node. "Subject exhibits persistence despite inadequate musculoskeletal integrity. Motivation unclear." "I can hear you," Xander said, breathless. "Yes. You're narrating like I'm a nature documentary. Observation requires detail. You could try being less clinical." "I could, but I won't." He sat down heavily on the padded bench nearby and peeled the sweat from his brow with a towel. The cold of Mars indoors always felt sharper after exertion, a dry, biting chill that settled under the skin. Kessin remained standing, gaze fixed, antennae twitching periodically as if filtering invisible frequencies. "Do you experience satisfaction when you fail slightly less than previously? It's not failing if I'm improving. That is a loose interpretation." Xander took a sip of electrolyte water, sour and metallic but better than nothing. "You're not wrong, but there's a difference between not succeeding and getting closer." Kessin made a low vibration in response, which might have been a chuckle. "Humans have a remarkable tolerance for marginal returns." "Yeah, well, it's either that or sit here waiting for my pelvis to heal on its own. Not the most entertaining option. I have studied your entertainment. Many of your visual media portray injury comically. Your species simulates falling, crashing, and bodily harm for amusement. Slapstick. Yes, this term is misleading. There are no sticks. It's a figure of speech. Figures of speech are inefficient. They help us cope." Kessin paused, then turned the slate toward him. "I reviewed Eller's report. He concluded that humor in painful contexts is a species-wide coping mechanism." "Do you corroborate this data? I'm not a control group, but you are consistent with the hypothesis." "Guess so." Kessin made another entry, fingers flicking in synchronized motions. "Why do you not resent your injuries?" "I do. Just not every second." "Why not constantly?" Xander leaned back until his spine pressed against the chilled wall. "Because that's exhausting, and I need the energy to walk again." The answer hung in the air for a moment before Kessin turned away without comment. He moved to observe another patient, an off-duty mechanic named Jules, whose arm was wrapped in a regrowth lattice and who was currently trying to open a snack packet with her feet. Xander lay down on the bench, eyes closed, breathing slowing. 5 minutes later, the door opened again. This time it was Hesh, a student from the Brel commune, whose voice always arrived before his body, a low trill followed by the scent of something vaguely citrusy. "You are the one who laughed during bone displacement," Hesh said, crouching beside him. "Depends which time you mean." Hesh's 4 hands each held a different device, 1 scanner, 1 recorder, 1 translator, and 1 covered in what looked like dried paint. "I have been reviewing vocal emissions during emergencies. Yours are peculiar." "Thanks." "No, truly. Your vocal patterns deviate from pain responses in other sentients. You maintain tonal variations consistent with social bonding." "Laughter?" "Yes." It sounded like an invitation. "To what?" "Communal resilience." Xander blinked at the ceiling. "That's a weird way to describe sarcasm. Is it incorrect?" "Not entirely." Hesh tapped on the recorder. "Would you describe your emotional state during the injury as stable?" "Nope." Then the laughter was not a reflection of internal equilibrium. "Definitely not." "Then what was it?" Xander opened his eyes. "It was a way to stop the people around me from panicking." Hesh's pupils dilated. "You used humor to manage the emotions of others while injured." "Yeah, that is a form of externalized emotional engineering. I'd call it instinct. That is imprecise but acceptable." Hesh sat cross-legged beside the bench and began drawing something on a transparent surface. The lines were erratic, sharp, like sound waves filtered through a storm. Are you sketching my emotional engineering? I am mapping its likely effects on group coherence. You guys ever just relax? No, minutes passed in silence broken only by the hum of the stim units and the occasional grunt from Jules, who was now attempting to use her teeth on the snack packet. Xander sat up slowly, tested his leg again, and stood with deliberate caution. Where are you going? Hesh asked. Gate test. Round 2. Your pain levels exceed recommended thresholds. Still gotta walk. He limped toward the bars again, this time slower, more deliberate. He counted each step under his breath, not for tracking but for rhythm. After the 4th step, his knee dipped awkwardly and he had to catch himself. From the corner, Kesson called out. That was an improvement of 2 seconds. I'll take it. You may also take another nap. You appear unstable. Appreciate the concern. I am not concerned. I am compiling failure rates. Even better. He finished the lap, breath ragged, then leaned forward over the bars, sweat dripping from his chin. I should not admire this, Hesh said from behind, but I find it compelling. Welcome to rehab. No. Your refusal to retreat from discomfort. It is. Not logical. Yet it produces results. Pain's not the enemy. Giving up is. Hesh rotated his sketch. Then your endurance is not merely physical. It's ideological. I never thought of it that way. Would you consent to being interviewed by the Brel Ethological Circle? Depends. Do they ask questions or just sketch aggressively? Hesh's version of laughter came out as a series of quick, musical tones. Both. Send me the forms. Later that evening, after lights dimmed across the habitat, Xander sat on the edge of his bunk, legs aching with the kind of pain that settled deep in the bone and refused to move. He watched the stars through the reinforced viewport and rubbed the scar that ran just above his hip. Eller's report had spread. Other students now trailed behind, recovering personnel, notepad equivalents in hand, quietly fascinated. They rarely interrupted. They simply watched. Listened. Some tried to mimic the jokes, but timing was not their strength. One nearly caused a diplomatic incident by laughing during a funeral simulation. Xander laid back, muscles twitching, and stared at the ceiling. Maybe this was what diplomacy looked like now. Not treaties or galas, but a broken man laughing in front of aliens who couldn't quite tell if it was bravery or madness. Maybe it was both. Xander's final session in the rehab bay started with a chair that wouldn't cooperate. It had one leg shorter than the others by possibly a single molecule, but that was enough to make it wobble every time he leaned forward to tighten his ankle brace. He kicked it gently. Does it always behave like this? Asked Rel, standing nearby with his long spine bent slightly forward, attempting to mimic a human slouch. It's been plotting against me since week 1, Xander said. I think it's in league with the floor tiles. Rel tapped his chest twice, which on his planet signaled shared amusement. I have reviewed the specifications. The chair is identical to the others. Then it's definitely personal. It was late morning, Earth time, though Mars lighting ran on a 26-hour cycle. The artificial sunbeams streaming across the rehab room cast soft reflections off the observation glass. A few other patients were scattered around, one working on gripping exercises, another navigating a cognitive balance module, but most eyes were on Xander. Or at least on Rel, who had become something of a curiosity himself. Unlike Eller and Kesson, Rel didn't carry a data slate. He brought a blank square of matte black membrane that pulsed with gentle color shifts whenever he observed something new. He claimed it reacted to emotional fluctuations, though nobody could figure out how to read it. I am not recording today, Rel said, lowering himself to sit, though his species didn't sit so much as fold. I am only here to understand. That's what they all say, Xander muttered, tightening the last strap. He stood up, slower than he liked, but without the tremors that had plagued him weeks earlier. This is my last scheduled walk. If I make it the full circuit, I'm cleared. For unrestricted movement? For stairs. Rel's hand twitched. Stairs. Tall things with multiple flat parts you climb. I know what they are. I do not understand why you would want to engage with them. Because I'm tired of elevators and sympathy. Xander took his place at the starting mark. The circuit wasn't long, a path that curved around the perimeter of the rehab bay, with 3 gradient changes and a simulated uneven surface halfway through. For most, it was a mild challenge. For someone with regrown connective tissue and a titanium pin in his hip, it was an ordeal. Do you require a verbal countdown? Rel asked. No, just keep an eye out in case I collapse dramatically. Would that be humorous? Depends if I break anything new. Xander took his first step. The floor felt steadier than he remembered. He focused on transferring weight evenly heel, midfoot, toe, then shifted forward. The ankle brace supported the roll of movement. Second step. Third. No pain, just pressure. Your breathing pattern is elevated, Rel said, trailing behind at a respectful distance. But not distressed. Yeah, I'm not panicking. You did previously. I did. I don't anymore. Why? Because I've done this enough times to know the worst parts behind me. The uneven surface approached. A mild incline, followed by a ripple of bumps simulating unstable ground. Xander hesitated for half a second before stepping onto it. His knee wobbled, but he adjusted. The brace squeaked slightly. He kept going. Rel's membrane shifted from violet to a soft gray-blue. You anticipate difficulty but proceed anyway. That's the gig. Many species would delay until full certainty. Then they'd spend their whole lives waiting. Another few feet. The incline was behind him now. He hit the last stretch, flat and smooth. His left foot dragged slightly, it always did, but the rhythm held. Would you consider this moment emotional? Rel asked. Yeah. Then why do you remain quiet? Because I don't want to ruin it with a dumb joke. Rel tilted his head. Then you perceive humor as potentially diminishing the gravity of certain events. Sometimes. Not always. But this one's mine. I want it to stay real. As he crossed the final mark, the system chimed softly. A green pulse lit up on the wall. Cleared. He stopped, breathing hard, sweat lining his collar. Rel remained still. I have not seen you silent at the end of an ordeal before, he said. I needed a minute, Xander replied. Rel's membrane rippled with quiet color. Understood. Later that afternoon, Dr. Halvorsen cleared him for duty re-entry. Modified, of course. He wouldn't be hauling equipment or climbing anything vertical for a while. But he could return to the training floor, assist with simulations, and, most importantly, sleep in his own quarters. Xander packed slowly. Not out of reluctance, but because every object in the rehab room had become oddly familiar. The faulty chair. The hand weights with the worn labels. The wall panel that beeped every 4 minutes no matter what you did. He looked at each one as he folded his last shirt. Outside the room, Rel waited again. No monitor today? Xander asked, tossing his duffel over his shoulder. No. Just a question. Go for it. What will you do now that you are functional again? Xander paused. Put the function to use. Rel blinked. That is not specific. I'll help train recruits. Maybe teach a few safety protocols. Might even write a manual. Will you include humor in your instruction? Only when they're ready for it. Rel's membrane flashed chartreuse, almost too fast to notice. Then the laughter is not only for pain. No, Xander said. Sometimes it's for remembering we got through it. They walked together down the hall toward the debriefing wing. The corridor curved gently to the left. Past a mural painted by second-year recruits, a crude but colorful rendering of Earth and Mars joined by a handshake. It was starting to chip at the corners. Outside the debrief room, Hesh leaned against the wall, sketchpad out, one hand flicking through visual overlays. He looked up. I heard you walked the full circuit. You heard right. Did you cry? No. Did you laugh? No. Interesting. Xander flopped into the seat next to him. Why's it interesting? Because we expected you to laugh. Maybe next time. Rel stood nearby, watching both of them. Perhaps laughter is not the defining response. Perhaps it is only one language of endurance. Yeah, Xander said. And sometimes silence says more. Hesh nodded, then flipped to a new page. Then my thesis requires revision. You're welcome. The debrief session was brief, just a few notes from command, a checklist of physical competencies, a statement of psychological clearance. At the end, Dr. Halvorsen handed him a small, sealed envelope. What's this? Letter of recommendation for the Adaptive Resilience Corps. If you're interested. Xander held the envelope without opening it. I might be. As he stepped out into the corridor, several alien students stood scattered near the checkpoint, notepads and membranes and scanners all deactivated. They weren't observing anymore. They were waiting. Rel turned to him one last time. Thank you for your cooperation. Xander shrugged. I didn't do much. You did what you always do. You endured. And you brought us with you. He smiled, not a grin, not a joke, just a quiet stretch of the mouth. Well, he said, next time someone breaks a femur, you know where to find me. We hope there will not be a next time. Me too. They parted ways at the main atrium. Xander headed toward the training wing. Rel and the others filed toward the departure terminal, their data complete, their observations finalized. Behind them, the base returned to its rhythm. Rel's final report would read, they suffer. They recover. They do not hide the pain, nor are they consumed by it. They carry it forward, sometimes wrapped in laughter, sometimes in silence. But always they walk.